evening, I'm Mahantawa with the news-making headlines around the world. An honoring ceremony is held on the occasion of naming His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah as humanitarian leader. The Council of Ministers holds an extraordinary session at Seat Palace under the chairmanship of His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al Mubarak Al Hamad Al Sabah, the Prime Minister. Palestinians urge the UN Security Council to stop Israel provocations and incitement against Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. And the US President and the Republicans promise to work together after the Democrats suffer a huge defeat in the midterm elections. In our first item, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, an honoring ceremony was held yesterday evening on the occasion of naming His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah a humanitarian leader and Kuwait a humanitarian center by the United Nations. The ceremony was held during the Cultural Forum of Peru and Kuwait in Babtain Central Library for Arabic Poetry. His Highness the Emir deputized the advisor at the Emiri Diwan Muhammad Abdullah Abu Hassan to attend the event. The ceremony started with the national anthem of Kuwait, followed by a recitation of verses from the Holy Quran, and then the representative of His Highness the Emir delivered a speech in which he voiced sincere gratitude and appreciation over the honoring and praised the distinctive relations linking both countries. Afterwards, the representative of His Highness the Emir was presented with a commemorative gift on this occasion. Meanwhile, the ambassador of Peru to Kuwait, Haley Pelez Castro, addressed the attendees, hailing the humanitarian efforts of His Highness the Emir all over the world and praising his continuous support for humanitarian causes. For his part, Abdulrahman Khalid Al-Babtain delivered a speech on behalf of the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Al-Babtain Foundation, where he expressed gratitude over hosting the ceremony and wished the South American country further stability and security. Finally, Chairman of the Gulf Group for Economic Consultations, Dr. Mustafa Babahani, said in a speech that Kuwait is keen on boosting dialogue among different civilizations in line with achieving world peace, and voiced appreciation over this ceremony that reflects the depth of bilateral ties between Kuwait and Peru. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah received a cable of congratulations from His Excellency the President of the Republic of Sudan, Omar Hassan Ahmed Al Bashir, on the occasion of naming His Highness the Emir a humanitarian leader and Kuwait a humanitarian center by the United Nations. Meanwhile, His Highness the Emir sent a reply cable to His Excellency the Sudanese President expressing gratitude for his warm greetings that reflect the deep bilateral ties between the two countries. The Council of Ministers held an extraordinary session at Seat Palace this morning under the chairmanship of His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al Mubarak Al Hamad Al Sabah, the Prime Minister. Following the meeting, the Minister of State for Cabinet Affairs Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah Al Mubarak Al Sabah said the Cabinet took note of the outcome of the comprehensive study carried out by the International Bank on necessary practical approaches to push forward the development and reform process. The bank's representatives briefed the Council of Ministers on the studies they conducted within the framework of diagnosing the problems and obstacles facing the economic reform and development course in the country. In the meantime, the Cabinet stressed the necessity of taking serious and solid steps in this matter to implement the desired overall reform and noted that it will continue discussing this issue in the upcoming meeting, expressing gratitude over the International Bank's efforts in preparing this distinctive study. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al Mubarak Al Hamad Al Sabah, the Prime Minister, received a telephone call from his Egyptian counterpart Ibrahim Mahlib, during which they discussed the solid bilateral ties and issues of common concern. His Highness the Prime Minister then expressed deep condolences to Mahlib on the passing away of a number of students in the tragic accident that took place in Al Buhaira Governorate. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah met today with the Qatari Foreign Minister Dr. Khalid bin Mohammed Al Atiyah. Both officials discussed mutual relations and means of boosting them in all domains, as well as the latest regional and international developments. The meeting was attended by the Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office, Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Mohammed Al Sabah, Director of the Protocol Department, Ambassador Dari Ajran Al Ajran, Director of the GCC Affairs Department, Ambassador Nasser Haj Al Mizyan, Deputy Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office, Ambassador Saleh Salim Al Loghani, and a host of foreign ministry officials. The first Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Subah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Subah hosted a luncheon in honor of the Qatari Foreign Minister Dr. Khalid bin Mohammed Al-Atiyah and his accompanying delegation currently visiting the country. The luncheon was attended by the Foreign Under-Secretary Khalid Sliman Al-Jarallah, Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al-Muhammad Al-Subah, Director of the Protocol Department Ambassador Dari Ajran Al-Ajran, Director of the GCC Affairs Department Ambassador Nasser Haj Al-Mizyan, Deputy Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office Ambassador Saleh Salim Al-Loghani, and a host of foreign ministry officials. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defence Sheikh Khalid Al-Jarrah Al-Subah met this morning with the British Defence Secretary MP Michael Fallon and his accompanying delegation, along with the Ambassador of the UK to Kuwait Matthew Lodge. Both sides tackled issues of common concern, especially in the military field, and discussed the bilateral relations and means of consolidating them. The meeting was attended by the Chief of the Army's General Staff, Lieutenant General Mohammed Khalid Al-Khidr, the Defence Under-Secretary Jassar Abdulrazak Al-Jassar, Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence and Security Apparatus, General Abdulrahman Al-Hadhoud, Deputy Chief of Staff for Reinforcement and Supply Apparatus, General Lafi Rashid Al-Azmi, and Director of Organizing and Planning, Colonel Walid Al-Sardi. Palestinians and Jordanians urged the UN Security Council to demand that Israel immediately stop provocations and incitement against Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. They warned that further escalation could lead to another crisis, threatening peace in the Middle East. Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour said the actions blatantly intended to assert Israeli control over the compound continues unabated. The warning followed the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque on Wednesday by Israeli extremists protected by more than 300 Israeli security forces, which led to a confrontation with Palestinian worshippers. A Palestinian reportedly angered by the confrontation later drove a minivan into a crowd waiting for a train, killing one person and wounding 13. Rockets were fired from the outskirts of Kobani today as fighting between Kurdish rebels and militants raged up for the besieged town. The rockets were fired from an area that was previously captured by the Islamic State, although it was not immediately clear who was firing them. Earlier, Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga fighters and moderate Syrian rebels bombarded the IS positions in Kobani. Kobani became a symbolic test of the US-led coalition's ability to halt the advance of the IS, which has poured weapons and fighters into its assault of the town that has lasted more than a month. A bombing near Egypt's presidential palace in Cairo wounded one passerby today in the latest of a deadly trio of attacks in and around the capital overnight. Earlier, a bomb planted in a train killed 2 Egyptian policemen and wounded 11 other people when it exploded at a station in the Nile Delta province of Manufiyah late on Wednesday. Another small bomb exploded about an hour later in a Cairo metro station, wounding 3 people. Local media reported that the death toll could climb, with some severe injuries reported. There were no immediate claims of responsibility for the attacks. The U.S. Senate's new Republican leader and President Barack Obama both promised to end the political gridlock that has frustrated American voters. Republicans made historic gains in the midterm elections and now control both legislative chambers. Incoming Senate leader Mitch McConnell said he would make the ineffective Senate function and pass bills. Obama said he was eager to work with the new Congress to make the next 2 years as productive as possible. The election campaign was characterized by widespread frustration expressed by voters about the inability of Congress to work together.
I have a unique responsibility to try and make this town work. So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you. To the 2/3 of voters who chose not to participate in the process yesterday, I hear you too. All of us have to give more Americans a reason to feel like the ground is stable beneath their feet. There is a majority of votes in the House to get this passed. And Speaker Boehner.
The head of the UN mission, Tony Bambury, charged with fighting Ebola in West Africa, told reporters he does not yet have the resources necessary to defeat it and more help was urgently needed despite significant contributions from the UK, China, Cuba and the US. but he was hopeful of achieving the target of 70% bed space for new cases and 70% safe burials by December. The World Health Organization said the confirmed death toll stands now at 4,818. The numbers are down since the WHO previously reported figures last Friday, as it says it has changed the way the figures are collated. As part of the first cultural season for the Antiquities and Museums Department of the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, the department organized a specialized lecture entitled Prehistoric Ages in the Arabian Peninsula. The lecture was given by researcher and professor Ahmed Saeed, who affirmed that the Arabian Peninsula occupied a strategic position in many stages during prehistoric times. The event took place at the Theatre of the National Museum of Kuwait and witnessed high attendance and participation of many researchers, professors, history and philosophy students, as well as enthusiasts in this field. Heba Abdurrahman was there and has this report.
The National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, or NCCAL's Department of the Antiquities and Museums organized their second lecture as part of the first cultural season for the department. During the lecture, the researcher and professor Dr. Ahmed Saeed said that the special position of the Arabian Peninsula was the reason behind the fact that it had a significant link between the three continents of the Old World. The peninsula was characterized by the diversity of terrain and environments, which had a large role in the life of man in prehistoric sites and the redistribution of the era to another. He added that the Arabian Peninsula is considered geographically attached to the continent of Asia as well as to Africa by way of the Sinai Peninsula, indicating that it was part of the African continent millions of years ago. But the geological factors and the movements of the ground layers caused depression and led to its current position 5 million years before entering the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea.
Today is the second lecture in our cultural season, which started last month. And this season we are focusing about ancient history and history for Kuwait territory and also Arabic Peninsula. And we hope in this season we can present the last result for the historian and the field work, I mean for the archaeologist. And we try to open a kind of negotiating or discussing with the audience about the ancient history, about the human, about societies who settled in Kuwait or in the Gulf from millenniums or thousands of years. So we are focusing on this subject now, and we hope that in the near future or the second season, we are going to invite it also our colleague from the GCC country to share with us this season, the cultural season, and I hope in the near future we are going to make it more international than local or region or sub-region.
The Arabian Peninsula have been dramatically affected by the climate, especially with dry rolls as well as rain rolls during the transitional period between the Stone Ages. The lecture also revealed the fact that the Central and Northern Arabian Peninsula region did not take its scientific right in the study of prehistoric ages, while many studies that were conducted in Europe and Africa rewrote history and dates for those ages. The first scientific expedition to the area arrived in the year 1953 and revealed many of the hills archaeologically in Bahrain, which encouraged those who made it to the orientation towards the west coast of the Arabian Gulf.
You know, this is the first season, and it is the first time we organize it with my colleague in the department. And because what we found that the society, they don't have that much of information. And frankly, it is our fault as people who work in this field. Now we should open the floor for them to share it with us and to discuss it with us, because it is also a part of their own history, their own identity. So they should share with us. So it is the first time, and we are going ahead.
The various archaeological studies that took place in the Gulf region pointed to the evolution of human civilization in this region to the same level as its counterparts in the evolution of the ancient Near East region. Today's lecture came as part of the first cultural season for the Antiquities and Museums Department in the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, in addition to the fact that it also coincides with the 20th cultural season for Dar al-Athar al-Islamiyya. From the theater of the Kuwait National Museum, this is Heba Abdurrahman reporting for English News.
And moving on to the local financial news, where the main indices of Kuwait Stock Exchange ended in red zone today, with the weighted index at 473.02, losing 4.4 points. The price index settled at 7,134.61, shedding 58.81 points, and Kuwait 15 index was at 1,144.88, losing 13.93 points. The number of trades altogether amounted to 4,998 transactions, worth about 28 million Kuwaiti dinars, with around 229 million shares changing hands. And in our final item tonight, the Austrian ambassador to Kuwait, His Excellency Ulrich Frank, and his wife, Mrs. Ulrich Frank, hosted a reception at his residence in Rawda to celebrate Austria's National Day. Many guests attended the reception, including ambassadors, diplomats, members of the press, and distinguished guests. Our reporter Rinwa Jabouri was there and has the following report.
Every year on October 26, Austrians celebrate their country's declaration of permanent neutrality after World War II and its regained status as an independent and sovereign nation on October 26, 1955. The day is an extremely special one that holds deep connotations to the Austrian community. Furthermore, a very different tradition on National Day are the fitness marches. These are hikes that are organised throughout the country and attract around 100,000 people each year. The aim is to promote fitness and raise awareness of a healthy lifestyle.
Today we celebrate the day when the Austrian law of neutrality was passed in the Austrian Parliament, which was on October 26 in the year 1955. And as I said in my speech, it was an important step for Austrian independence, and it became also an important factor in our foreign policy. And it does not mean that we are neutral in when it comes, as for example, to human rights issues, but it was an important historical step in our development. Austria is well known for its culture, for its cultural tradition, especially for music, and I hope we brought something of this to Austria, to Kuwait, especially tonight here in this garden of the Austrian residence.
Austria, this is the center of Europe. For example, for Ukraine, because we have a lot of relatives and other contacts with Austria. As you know, in Pharma Empire, we were also part of Austria, so it's some kind of brotherhood's relation with our country. And I, using this opportunity, once more congratulate my colleague and my Austrian, all Austrian nation with this day.
The Austrian ambassador to Kuwait, His Excellency Ulrich Frank, held an extremely warm and special reception at his residence to embrace the day with the Austrian community and to also share the joy and pride of Austria's National Day with the local community, including diplomats.
It's always a great opportunity to celebrate, to enjoy the national days of various countries, and I belong to the United Nations, and United Nations is representative of all the member states, So it's always a pleasure. It's a lovely evening, a lot of great guests here, lovely friends, a great environment. But more importantly, many things to enjoy, to celebrate the speeches, the music, the food. And as I said, Austria is one of those countries which is doing a lot in terms of providing support to the countries in trouble, especially in the context of development in Africa, in Asia. And as I said, it's a pleasure to be here. Austria itself is a small country and just like Kuwait, but they have big hearts. you know, and they have wonderful culture, you know. I'm sure the symphonies and the orchestras and the music, you know, it's lovely, you know. I mean, Vienna is one of my favorite city in any case. So as I said, you know, yes, a small country, but so much to offer, very generous, very supportive, very friendly, you know, and he's a great friend of mine. But, you know, as I said, you know, I'm glad that I'm here, you know, to join all of you to celebrate, you know.
Austria is indeed a beautiful country that has a lot to offer, but even more, the Austrian society is known to be one of extreme modesty, have a rich culture and admirable traditions. The celebration at the home of the Austrian ambassador indeed spoke volumes about the warmth and generosity that the Austrian people possess. The Austrian community, although is a relatively small one, is making a huge impact in Kuwait with its beautiful and vibrant culture. From the residency of the Austrian ambassador, I'm Genra Jabiri reporting to you for the English News.
For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Well, with that, we conclude our news bulletin. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant time. I'm Maham Pawa. Before we go, we remind you once again of our main top stories. Have a pleasant time and good night. An honoring ceremony is held on the occasion of naming His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah as humanitarian leader. The Council of Ministers holds an extraordinary session at Sif Palace under the chairmanship of His Highness Sheikh Jabal Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister. Palestinians urge the UN Security Council to stop Israel's provocations and incitement against Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. And the US President and the Republicans promise to work together after the Democrats suffer a huge defeat in the midterm elections.